Hello friends, and welcome to my channel. Today, I will be narrating a few creepy posts from the dark corners of Reddit.
Story 1.
To give a little context, I used to work at an apartment complex. As a result, I've had my fair share of creepy encounters. Most residents keep to themselves and don't cause issues, probably about 95%, but the other 5% took up almost all of my time. Isaac was one of the 5%. When he first rented his apartment, he definitely had stoner vibes, but he was nice enough and passed his background check. Almost immediately, however, he started causing issues. The lady next door complained she could smell his smoke constantly. The guy downstairs complained he could hear his stereo all hours of the day and night. Another resident accused him of following him home one night. The police were regularly there, breaking up fights between him and his girlfriends. We caught him hiding 2 large dogs in his apartment, and he regularly let them run loose, which ultimately resulted in another dog and 2 people getting attacked. He accidentally discharged a gun in his apartment once. Needless to say, he caused a lot of issues. At first, he was very apologetic and said he would make an effort to remedy the problems. But things kept getting worse, and after a year of weekly calls or notices from the office, he eventually became standoffish. One morning, I received a call from Isaac letting me know he'd broken up with one of his girls and she wouldn't leave the apartment. He asked me to personally come up and remove her. I'm a small woman, so even if I wanted to take the risk, I physically wouldn't be capable of wrestling an angry woman out of his apartment. I suggested he called the police. He then asked if I could make a maintenance man come up to remove her. I offered to call the police on his behalf, but Isaac said he didn't want to involve them and hung up. A few hours later, Isaac came down to the office with a jump drive and said he needed to print out a 50-plus page document. Residents weren't technically allowed to use our office printer, but on rare occasions someone asked to, I usually didn't say no. But between Isaac becoming such a problem tenant and how large his document was, I told him I couldn't print his document. I gave the excuse that our paper, toner, print history was monitored, and we would get in trouble for printing such a large document out for him. Not liking my answer, he started to scream about how it was BS. He accused me of being useless, bringing up my refusal to fight his ex, and power tripping. He called me a fucking bitch several times and said someone needed to bring me down a peg. I was over him at this point and told him that if he was going to behave like a child, that he needed to leave. He told me I couldn't make him. Bluntly, I told him he would leave, or I would call the police and have him removed. I also told him I would ban him from the office going forward. My threat seemed to work. He angrily knocked my pen holder over, then slammed both doors hard as he left. The following morning, a cop was waiting for me when I got to work. He asked if Isaac was a resident, and I confirmed he was. The officer explained that the body of a teen had been discovered the day before, and Isaac was their prime suspect. He was the last person to text the kid, asking him to meet where his body was found shortly after the message. The police believed Isaac has been paid to kill him. Based on the timing of the text and when the boy was discovered, Isaac would have had to have left my office and gone directly there. Ultimately, the police wanted to use Isaac's move-out day as an opportunity to try and catch him. To nobody's surprise, he did not show up. When I walked to his apartment to inspect for damage, I found a bank receipt from the day of the murder. Someone had wired him $17,000. I thankfully never saw Isaac again. He was caught in another country a few months later and is now in prison.
Story 2.
My family and I had a caravan in a holiday park in NSW. We would go there every school holiday, and there were many kids I used to run around and play with. I have fond memories of this place, where I learned to ride a bike and had my first kiss, but other memories are not as good, and now leave me with that egg-flipped feeling in my stomach. The people that owned the caravan park had a son. He was roughly 25 years old, and I would have been around 5 or 6. He would drive around the park and collect everyone's rubbish on a tractor and do other odd jobs like this to help out his parents. Every once in a while, he would pull up when I was playing out front and ask if I wanted to ride on the tractor. I, being young and naive, of course accepted and jumped on, because what child doesn't want to ride on a tractor? This was back in the days where parents would let their children play in the streets without much supervision, and you just came back home when the streetlights came on. One day, he dropped me back to our van. My dad came storming out, grabbed me by the arm, and yanked me off the tractor. Without saying a word to the man, he took me inside and told me to never, ever hang out with him again. "I don't want you hanging around that man again," he said, without saying why. "But he's nice, he gives me lollies," I say. "Just don't, I'm telling you, don't talk to him," he replied. I couldn't understand why my dad didn't want me talking to the nice man, who only gave me tractor rides, gave me lollies and hugs, and sometimes the occasional sandwich. I remember telling the man, one day, my dad said, "I'm not allowed to talk to you anymore," to which he smirked and replied, "Oh yeah? Why's that?" Fast forward, nearly 14 years later, my family and I are watching the news when the man's face flashes across the screen, attached to a story where he had killed 2 people and is now serving time in prison. My dad said, look at this. I knew he was bad news. There's always just something about him. Do you remember when he used to take you around on the tractor?" My blood ran cold and my stomach dropped. The most disturbing part? He killed people with pills he would call his lollies. Please, always listen to your parents. My God, I would be dead by now if it wasn't for them.
Story 3.
This event happened 11 years ago. I had just turned 18 and moved to Orange County, California. I moved into an apartment complex near the community college I was attending, so a bunch of younger people around my age lived there. I didn't know a single person in California, so I would take any opportunity to socialize and meet new people. A big gathering place at the complex was at the main pool where people would drink and relax in the sun. Over the first few months, I would meet a bunch of people while hanging out at the pool. I never got super close to any of them, but I would see these same people several days a week. We would often go back to each other's apartments after the pool to drink or smoke some more. It was a really mellow and fun environment. 3 people I would see there all the time were Sarah, Mike, and John. One day, after hanging out at the pool, Sarah, my girlfriend, and I went back to my apartment. The 3 of us smoked, and Sarah went back home. Regular day. The next day, we were at the pool, and there were a few of the usual people missing, but still a solid 10 people, so we didn't really notice. We go home later that night, and my girlfriend gets a call from one of our friends. My girlfriend playfully answers her phone, and the expression on her face starts to change. She's just listening, and her eyes get super wide. She says, "What the fuck? Are you fucking serious?" and hangs up the phone. I'm super confused, so I ask her, What happened?" She says, "Dude, the police just found Sarah dead in Mike's apartment, and Mike is nowhere to be found." What the fuck? It was insane. I asked her if he had said anything else, but she told me he was really hard to understand. We went to bed and met up with the usual crowd at the pool the next day, which included John and his fiancée. We're all talking about how unbelievable this is. Sarah was the epitome of sweet, and Mike was easily one of the kindest people I'd ever met. He was one of the first people I met when I moved, and he gave my underage ass some beer and told me stories. These were both good people. It didn't make any sense. We all kind of started to speculate, just trying to make sense of it. Nobody can get a hold of Mike. We all start to worry if he's safe. Somebody suggests that Mike probably killed Sarah, panicked, and ran. That was a hard pill to swallow for most of us, but it was the only thing that kind of made sense. John shook his head and said, "Man, just awful." We all dispersed and went home. It would be the last time I would see most of those people. Fast forward a month or two. I was hanging out in my apartment one evening when my girlfriend calls me frantically. "Please, come to my friend's apartment. You are not gonna believe this shit. This is the most fucked up shit I've ever experienced," she said. I rushed over to the apartment where my girlfriend was. She was with two friends we knew from the pool. One of them was crying hysterically while the other sat with him. My girlfriend motioned for me to go outside, and the other friend stayed back to keep consoling the other. Once we were out of earshot, she told me why her friend was crying so intensely. Her friend had just got back from being with the police. He was asked to identify pieces of a dismembered body that were found in the sewer. He was crying because he positively identified the body parts as Mike's. How did the police know they were there? They knew because John told them. He did it. Turns out, John was, and still is, a broke piece of shit. This bastard was engaged and didn't have enough money for his wedding. Being a goddamn smart person, Mike had a bunch of money saved up. John found out about it and decided to kill Mike and steal his money. John was an acting student and asked Mike to help him move some heavy things at the theater. When Mike's back was turned, John shot him. He then took Mike to another location where he dismembered his body and dumped the remains in the sewer. John took Mike's keys and phone and then went back to Mike's apartment. From there, he texted Sarah on Mike's phone, asking for her to come over because he wanted to talk. Being the sweet and caring person she was, Sarah went over to Mike's apartment to help him feel better. When she got there, John snuck up behind her and shot her. He left the apartment and framed Mike for Sarah's murder. John was caught because he's a stupid fucking idiot. He paid some kid to withdraw money from Mike's ATM account. Cops found the kid and he told them about John. They quickly tracked John down at his bachelor's party, and he was taken in for questioning where he would admit that he murdered Sarah and Mike. He would later be sentenced to death. After sentencing, Mike's dad spoke to John across the courtroom and said, "My only regret is that the state of California doesn't allow me to kill you myself." Turns out, his fiancée tried to help him hide the evidence, and she was sentenced to time as well. All in all, pretty dark story. Aside from the violence, what messes me up is that this guy had literally just murdered two of our friends and was at the pool commiserating with us. Like genuinely acting upset, sad, and confused. He's a horrible human, and I hope he suffers for the rest of his life. My deepest and continued condolences go out to the family of the two innocent people that were killed. Thank you so much for listening. Please remember to like and subscribe, and I will see you
in the next one.